Welcome to another GTA 5 mission analysis. This time I'm going to focus on the group of missions that really let us get to know Michael, who is arguably Rockstar's most creative protagonist. And that creativity is also on hand when it comes to these missions and how Rockstar has evolved the GTA formula. Unfortunately, that same creative spark is not quite there when it comes to how the story moves from beat to beat. Thankfully, I know exactly how I want to go from beat to beat in this video. I'm going to start with the missions themselves, which are father-son, marriage counseling, the long stretch, and daddy's little girl. I'm not going to talk too much about the Strangers and Freaks missions unless I'm talking about the character stuff. And all the character stuff and story stuff is going to be later in the video. If you want to skip to that, you can go to the timestamp below. But for now, let's get to those missions. Father-son starts off like a standard car chase, but it quickly transforms into a crazy cinematic rescue mission where Michael has to get close enough to the boat for Franklin to hop on, and then has to catch Jimmy when he nearly falls off the boat. Mechanically, it's identical to every other mission, but the atmosphere is so different and ludicrous. It's a great example of how GTA 5 injects variety into the gameplay through these bombastic set pieces, even if you're basically doing the same thing you've done in every GTA game. A couple of things I don't like how Amanda's car is scripted to just sort of die. If this was something that happened in the open world, cool, but not a fan of it as a plot device, even if it does provide us a tutorial for garages, car mods, and extremely boring character pairings. The next mission introduces ammunition and a gameplay mechanic you can use in the open world. You can put a flashlight on your gun, but does anyone ever do that when not in this mission? Like, I don't even remember the button to press to do it. But other than that, the long stretch is great. This is the biggest and most challenging firefight we experience before we take control of Trevor a few hours from now, and it has a great set piece inside of a recycling center that's going up in flames, and it culminates in a helicopter chasing Franklin and his crew around with a spotlight in what feels like a modern day version of GTA San Andreas, if I was recording this video back in 2013, of course. Marriage counseling is probably the highlight of mission creativity for me in this batch. Part of it is it's our first time using the character switching mechanics since the prologue, and I think this mission puts that mechanic to good use, where Michael is driving while Franklin is shooting a Madrazo's henchman. The reason I think this works here is because they have both characters in the same location, and so you get a feel for the mechanic here in a tight and controlled gameplay environment. Later missions expand on it greatly to varying degrees of success, but here it's not needlessly complicated. But the reason the creativity of this mission stands out to me is how GTA 5 handles its spectacle. Usually an NPC tells the protagonist to go and do some explosive but cliched criminal activity. Here it's Michael just having an emotional outburst, and we don't really know what he's planning on doing. And then when you realize he's about to pull a house down with a truck and a winch, it's freaking glorious. Like, mechanically it's nothing. You just sit there and hold R2 the entire time. I mean, that's the same thing I've always done. But in terms of cinematic gameplay, this is GTA 5 aiming high and absolutely nailing it. But Michael isn't aiming high next mission, he's aiming low when he tosses that boombox into the ocean in Daddy's Little Girl. This mission's creativity shows itself with how it's structured into multiple phases. It starts off as the generic drive someone somewhere mission that GTA 3 introduced into our lives 2 decades ago.
Well, maybe you could do me a favor. One of my girls needs a ride, so grab a car and pick up Misty from the clinic, then bring her back here.
But driving this game's version of Misty to the beach is not the end of this mission. No, we segue into our introduction to riding bicycles, which is always a ton of fun and was sorely missed in GTA 4. And this feels like one of those light and fluffy, relax in the city type of missions that we occasionally get. But GTA 5 loves having these missions have multiple phases to them that are wildly different to each other. And a fun bike ride on the beach filled with unfunny fat jokes changes quickly into a tutorial for how to swim, and then a high-speed and incredibly fun chase on jet skis. And this set piece plays out pretty similarly to the one in Marriage Counseling minus the character switching. I mean, it's a car chase where you can either lose your pursuers or you can kill them, but just by changing the environment and the vehicle, it makes things seem brand new. And this chase is awesome, even if it's ridiculously easy to crash on this thing. And while we're talking about how easy it is to fail missions, can Rockstar please stop being so restrictive with what causes a mission to fail? Here I failed the long stretch because it took Stretch too long to get to the car, and then he just hung on while he was being shot by the cops. Realistic, yes, but maybe hustle into the car. Worse is in pulling another favor, which you can do during this part of the game. Tanya shows no hustle at all, and then the mission fails because she skins a knee. Like, come on, make it so that these characters just get in the car faster. Like, sacrifice some of that classic Rockstar meticulous animation, which we sure as hell know that they're never gonna do. But then at least make the missions not just end arbitrarily. It's so frustrating. But whatever, that rant was all a way for me to segue into But whatever, that rant was all a way for me to segue from gameplay scripting to the script of the story. And while I think the script has some of the most witty and clever moment-to-moment dialogue I've seen in a game, it also doesn't handle character development or motivation super well.
Alright, home.
I ain't your homie. I'm someone you want to impress.
Franklin attempting this 30-foot jump to impress Michael was a joke, but character motivations are not GTA 5's strong suit. But let's start with the character who the game seems to understand best, Michael. Michael is fascinating for so many reasons. There was his betrayal of his friends in the prologue, which hooked me immediately. Then we flash forward a decade and see that he's just become a depressed, out-of-shape, middle-aged dude with a superiority complex. That's freaking gold! And it's clear why Rockstar just couldn't wait to bring Michael back into the fold as early as possible. The contradictions in Michael are endless. He plays the wizened Obi-Wan Kenobi part when he meets Franklin formally, advising him against a life of crime.
You look like a good kid. But if you want my advice, you give this shit up. You work hard, screw over everybody that you love. Hurt, rob, kill indiscriminately, and maybe, just maybe if you're lucky, you become a 3-bit gangster.
But what we saw in that first therapy session way before this mission was a Michael who's already unhinged because he misses his criminal past. There, he crapped on his son for being lazy, but glorified his own actions because
I don't have the advantages that kid has.
Michael is all about justifying why he's a terrible person because he truly wants to believe he's something he's not, a good person. This isn't even subtext, he straight up tells Jimmy this.
I always thought I was the good guy.
But Michael is completely delusional because he stands for all of the wrong things. Going back to that meeting with Franklin, let's zero in on one specific line.
You look like a good kid.
You look like a good kid. That's very nice of Michael. Now let's look at the very first dialogue exchange Michael had after the prologue.
Your son, James. He's a good kid?
He's a good kid? A good kid. Why? Does he help the poor?
Michael is so messed up that he considers the guy who broke into his house to steal his son's car to be a good kid, but he cannot stand his own son because in his words,
I want you to do something besides sit there eating.
Never mind that Michael was essentially doing the exact same thing right before he smashed Jimmy's TV. Michael is just dying to get back into the game, and it's such a fantastic setup for the story, and it's made most clear during marriage counseling. There, he's justifiably angry about the whole Amanda situation, but his rant once he finds the tennis coach reeks of a guy who's losing it and doing it in the most grandiose, self-congratulatory way possible.
How f***ing magnanimous! May I please offer you my applause?
Michael's been dormant for a decade plus, and given the slightest opening, he goes all in, to the point that even Franklin questions things.
Tied a cable to one of those supports up there.
You finna pull his deck down?
Hey, that prick pulled my marriage down.
Man, you really gonna be this dramatic?
Yeah, whatever.
And that flimsy self-rationalization is all Michael needs. But once he's satisfied himself and then learns that the house was not owned by the tennis coach sleeping with Amanda, but by a Mexican drug lord, here's his reaction.
Felt good, man. Woo! Yeah, doing something for a change. Ha!
And how about his reaction to being beaten with a baseball bat by Martin Madrazo outside of his house that his family lives in and told that he needs to pay $2.5 million to cover the destroyed house?
Damn, you alright?
Never better.
Michael is just a violent thug who glorifies violent crime. But what makes things worse is that Michael desperately wants to rework the narrative around his life to make his actions seem less horrible. This is how dangerous narcissists are born.
I'm rich. I'm miserable. I mean, half the time my kids can't stand me. The other half, my wife is cheating on me. I kill people without remorse, Doc. Hell, I'm pretty average for this town, really. Wait a minute. That's the shot. I think I'm having a breakthrough here, Doc.
Michael is such a great character conceptually. The problem is, if someone were to ask me, is Michael well written? My answer would be, I don't know, is he?
What exactly are you asking, Doc?
I guess I'm not really asking anything. I'm just trying to say that, I mean, Michael's a good idea, but I have him below John Marston, Arthur Morgan, Nico Bellic, CJ whatever his last name is, Tommy Vercetti, maybe even Claude. Well, probably not Claude, but, well, maybe Claude is above him. Now, I'm not saying that Claude and Michael are even close in terms of their depth of character, but I am saying that I think GTA 3 syncs with Claude in a way that GTA 5 just doesn't with Michael. And that's because there's such a stark difference between how much care went into Michael compared to literally every other character in GTA 5. Meanwhile, in a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, it feels like every character is given proper attention, not just Arthur Morgan. And even a nothing character like Claude, well, he fits in perfectly into GTA 3's extremely simplistic storytelling.
Some Diablo scumbag has been pimping his scuzzy bitches in my backyard. Go and take care of things for me.
When all you're doing in that game is some variation of this, you don't need your protagonist to be interesting or to say anything. But if your character is as complex as Michael, then you need complexity around him, and I don't think that is something GTA 5 is interested in. To illustrate this, let's talk about how the rest of the DeSanta family are introduced in these missions, which forms the backbone of Michael's story. And let's start with his wife, Amanda. We first see her silently grieving in the prologue, and then not silently enjoying this little grind session she and her tennis coach are having in the mission Complications.
Yeah, I could get used to this.
Hopefully that wouldn't be the extent of her character development in this vital portion of Michael's story. And thanks to Jimmy, it is not.
My brother from another mother. I mean, I hope so, because my mom was kind of a skank back in the day.
So if that was just a joke, fine. It's not that funny, but Jimmy's not that funny, so whatever. But that is actually Amanda's character in this portion of the game. Like, there's nothing else to her here.
Amanda! You better not be! Not in my house.
You, Michael, go away!
I'm paying that turd $150 an hour to my wife in my own bed?
Michael, go away!
No, I'm sorry, bro. She said you had an arrangement.
You and I are gonna have an arrangement.
I actually think this scene is hilarious and fun, but this is literally the only time I think Michael interacts with Amanda before Trevor comes back to Los Santos, unless you count optional friend activities or the tiny mission where Amanda gets arrested for shoplifting a couple of missions from now. So with this being the only real interaction, Amanda is given no redeeming qualities. Like, I would have much rather have seen Michael and Amanda work on their marriage and it fail, and then Michael go back into crime, and that be a source of drama, like him betraying Amanda by doing this. But instead, it's like Amanda is the reason Michael goes back into crime, and while that's easy, it also makes Michael way, way less interesting. Like, rather than use Michael's family for some actual drama, they're just the butt of jokes repeatedly, and are there to get cheap laughs.
Have I, got to be a witness because I did some blow?
You did blow?
Yeah, I did some blow, and that might, make my testimony inadmissible.
You know, I chuckle at this dialogue, but it's empty laughs because Tracy's just a joke. And again, Jimmy is our source for all information about who the DeSanta women actually are.
That's just because she's too busy getting dudes to get on TV. You know the kind of boat, the one that makes a young, impressionable girl drop her pants and spread her legs.
That was riveting. I wish GTA 5 handled females a bit better or a lot better, and I hope they do better with Lucia in GTA 6. And I get that Rockstar likes their satire in their GTA games, and Amanda and Tracy are supposed to be satirical, exaggerated characters. But I think a big issue with GTA 5 is this is a very ambitious story that requires some restraint and nuance for it to truly work. But Rockstar opts to satirize everything, which undermines any real emotion and robs the DeSanta women of any chance of being enjoyable characters. But it's not just limited to the female DeSantas, it's also the gamer bro DeSanta, though Jimmy does get more screen time. And there are definitely some rudimentary attempts at making us sympathize with Jimmy. After Michael and Franklin rescue him from the yacht in Father-Son, Jimmy hints about how he barely survived, but Michael just cares about the boat.
You're the kind of person who didn't let other people get in the way, but I hadn't, seen that happen before.
That was an extreme situation, and I had to act.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that when you see their faces every time you close your eyes.
This is actually really interesting, and it makes me want a version of this game where there were 4 or 5 missions where the DeSantas are watching Michael do basically normal stuff, but his anger issues are bubbling underneath, and he's slowly losing it until he finally starts shooting people off of yachts and pulling houses down. Then the kids are like, oh my god, our dad is up. But instead of slowly falling back into the life, as soon as we get control of Michael, he's immediately back in the life, so there's no contrast or buildup, and the most emotion we get out of the kids is Jimmy awkwardly saying this.
All we do is scream at each other. No wonder I can't get a job. It's all your fault. Or it's not, but it's partly your fault. I just want to impress you.
By selling my boat to some gangbangers?
I know it sounds dumb when you put it like that.
No, Jimmy, it's not dumb because of how Michael put it. It's just that this is clearly telling, not showing. Basically, the way Michael was conceptualized could have led to my favorite Rockstar protagonist ever, but because everyone around him is handled so haphazardly, it causes me to not actually care about Michael, which is something he has in common with Franklin. Because just like I said in the last video, I still don't care about Franklin here. Though I will say I like the Franklin in these missions way more than I do in his intro. I think he's a good down-to-earth foil for Michael's self-aggrandizing personality.
You're gonna rip people off and get paid for it. It's called capitalism.
So what I saw the other day was like when a corpse briefly reanimates itself and terrorizes everyone, right?
What you saw the other day was a guy dealing with pests.
I guess I never saw myself as just a pest.
Well, and today's lesson's all about humility.
And where the intro didn't really dive into his life in the hood in any sort of meaningful way, here Franklin actually drops some one-liners that are genuinely funny and tell us some things about his life and why money's a big deal for him.
Lesson number 1. Don't ever have kids.
Hey man, look, if I had kids, I don't think no parenting issues would arise over who had both privileges and who don't. Shit, motherfucker would be lucky to sit in a bathtub. Tennis coach? Oh, that's up, man. Wrist dudes, You know, back in the hood, man, we gotta watch out for the mailman, dog.
Yeah, I'm a cuckold, a snob, and a cliche.
This banter is really strong, and that's because Rockstar is really good at writing dialogue between its leads that's just laden with personality and flair. The problem is they still don't develop Franklin in any meaningful way. Pulling another favor is identical to pulling a favor, which is probably intentional. It's supposed to show the rut that Franklin is trying to get out of. But all the character bits here are repeated from earlier, so it truly feels pointless. Lamar continues to say and do hilarious things, but there's no depth to it. Denise continues to caricaturize caricatures, though should we be surprised based on how Amanda and Tracy are handled? And we also get introduced to an antagonist for Franklin's portion of this story, though you'd be excused for not realizing it, or worse, not remembering this guy at all. This guy is Stretch, an OG from the Grove Street families, and you can see the setup here for some drama. Stretch and Franklin absolutely despise each other.
Man, you ain't got no motherfucking respect. I got respect for reality.
Reality? All right, you keep thinking that. Just keep thinking that. Shit, you gonna get yours.
You.
I swear, man.
Strizets, come on, man. Cool out, man.
This motherfucker get on my goddamn nerves.
Get on my nerves too, man. Part of the storm, man.
Again, absolutely fantastic moment-to-moment dialogue, and I want to learn more and see where this goes. And we do get little snippets of information. After the fiasco with Dee at the recycling plant because of Lamar's stupidity.
Hold on, man. What the man? You was just kidnapping.
Stretch implies that Franklin and Lamar are going to be hung out to dry to protect the CGF.
If you started something with the ballers, shit, I don't care if you CGF for life, man. You done. Done, you dig?
And there's also some tension with what the original OGs like Stretch want to do with the CGF and what the younger ones like Lamar plan on doing, which we see in this exchange.
CGF has changed, man. No wonder the hood is so lame right now.
Speaking of change, Lamar's been meaning to talk to you, homie.
Nah, not now, homie.
What's happening?
It's nothing, my nothing, you know, just some ideas, that's all.
Did I miss something? When do they ever talk about Franklin and Lamar's plans for the gang before this in the story? Like, it feels like Rockstar had all of these ideas for the story but scrapped like half of them without removing the dialogue, which is kind of how I feel about Stretch. Like I said, he's one of the antagonists in the game, but you couldn't tell by how the game just drops him from the story here until way later when Trevor shows up in Los Santos. Like, I wanted to see an actual arc here with Stretch, and not just because he's played by Hassan Johnson, aka Weebay from The Wire. I just wanted drama, but Stretch is given nothing to do. And that's kind of how Martin Madrazo is handled too. Here's another villain who shows up and then vanishes from the story for hours, other than to send a text message to Michael. Plus, what kind of Mexican gang lord doesn't have Michael and Franklin murdered on the spot here? Like, there's no sense of tension with these antagonists that are introduced here. And I can kind of see what probably happened here. Rockstar wanted its primary conflict to be between its three leads. So developing side characters and villains just sort of fell by the wayside, which is why a mission like The Long Stretch, it's just there to drive a wedge between Franklin and Lamar.
Hell no. You sounding more and more like a snee-eye itch every day.
So that Franklin can go whole hog into Michael's arms. I've done a lot of thinking and that joke didn't make much sense, but hopefully with Rockstar being so laser focused on the three protagonists thing that the plot bringing them together at least makes a little bit of sense, right?
What do you want?
Man, I come by for that drink you offered, that's all.
I wasn't really serious about that.
What?
That's how they came together? What kind of motivation is that for Franklin to go to the home of the man whose house he broke into previously, a man who showed an erratic violent streak and had a gun to his head the one time he interacted with him? Like, what made you think that he wanted you to come meet with him?
I appreciate a kid who follows orders without taking responsibility. Yeah, maybe one day we'll have a beer, and I'll explain how the world really works.
Yeah, Franklin actually taking up Michael on his offer is not how the world really works. And I don't buy this line as being enough for Franklin to think, let's work together.
I always trump big for a job well done. Now get out of here, kid.
Yeah, he gave him money, but that is flimsy. Character development, I can understand sort of neglecting that in the service of the plot, but like moving the plot from point A to point B should be like a fundamental part of a plot-heavy game. But GTA 5 just moves from like point A to point 7. And with that, so much of the ensuing dialogue about this partnership becomes extremely hit or miss.
Nah, man. Well, maybe we good together, you know? Like, maybe we can get shit done we couldn't do separate.
Wow. Franklin is really trying to convince himself that this relationship is anything other than unnatural. But fine, they came together awkwardly, I'll accept that. Maybe the mentoring relationship between Michael and Franklin is gradually built up and elaborated and given some substance, because it does have so much potential. Even little things like Michael being proud of Franklin for how he handles himself in marriage counseling, that could be something to latch onto and develop. But rather than slowly build up this relationship, GTA 5 devotes 2 missions to them getting to know each other before Michael is suddenly in need of $2.5 million. It does such a disservice to Michael and Franklin's relationship because it forces the game to skip the budding partnership so that they could force them into a heist super early in the game. Like, this line of dialogue would play way better if there were like 3 missions of Franklin and Michael working together before shit hits the fan.
I bet you know some shit.
You wouldn't believe the shit I know.
Yeah? You taking some scores?
There was a time, that was all I did.
Shit, well, you know, I could tell you some shit too.
Yeah, like what?
About this city I was born and raised in.
Now think about it.
Yeah, do that, man. This could be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool if Michael had proven to Franklin that he could earn him some money, but all he's done is put a $2.5 million ransom on his head. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the story in GTA 5 at this point of the game. It feels kind of incoherent. And I hope the story starts to make more sense when I get to the next set of missions, so please like and subscribe because there's going to be more GTA 5 content. I apologize that I've been a little bit down on this game so far. I'm usually kind of blindly positive on the games that I talk about on this channel, but I said it at the beginning of this series, I have a very strong love-hate relationship with GTA 5.
You alright?
Never better. Not exactly enjoying myself here.